Sir, please. I spent my last $7. Take the water.
Thank you. I owe you my life. I own this company. You saved me.
You what? Oh my God.
Let me help you now.
Maria had only $7 left to her name. It was supposed to buy bread, milk, and something cheap enough to stretch into dinner for her little boy. But on her way home from another exhausting night scrubbing floors at a company where no one even knew her name, she saw an old man collapse near the bus stop. People stared, some walked past. Maria didn't. With shaking hands, she spent her last money calling for help and buying water, never once imagining that the frail stranger she was trying to save was Victor Hale, the billionaire owner of the very company that had just cut her hours without warning. By morning, Maria returned to work hungry, broke, and terrified she might lose the tiny apartment she called home. Then a black car pulled up outside the building. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, asked for the janitor named Maria, and handed her an envelope that would change everything. But it wasn't the money inside that left her speechless. It was the secret Victor Hale revealed about her past and the promise he made next. Scene 1. The hallway outside apartment 3B smelled faintly of boiled rice, old paint, and rainwater leaking through the cracked window near the stairs. Maria Alvarez stood at her door with her purse tucked under one arm and her sleeping son, Leo, resting against her shoulder. He was 6 years old, small for his age, with curls that fell across his forehead and a habit of holding on to her shirt even when he slept. His little hand was closed around a toy fire truck, missing one wheel. Maria shifted him gently, trying not to wake him as she searched for her keys. Her body ached from the long night. Her knees hurt from scrubbing marble floors. Her fingers smelled like lemon cleaner, no matter how hard she washed them. Inside the apartment, the silence greeted her like an unpaid bill. She laid Leo on the narrow bed they shared and pulled the blanket up to his chin. He stirred. "Mommy," he whispered. "I'm here, baby," she said softly. "Did you get cereal?" Maria froze for 1 second. Then she brushed his hair back and smiled the kind of smile mothers learn when the truth is too heavy for children. "Tomorrow," she said, "I'll make something nice tomorrow." Leo nodded, trusting her completely, and went back to sleep. Maria stood beside the bed a moment longer, looking at him. Tomorrow. She had been saying that word for weeks, as if tomorrow were a rich relative coming to rescue them. But tomorrow did not pay rent. Tomorrow did not fill the refrigerator. Tomorrow did not stop Mr. Ellis, the building manager, from sliding another warning notice under her door. She crossed the room and opened the fridge. 1 egg, half a cup of milk, a small container of rice from 2 nights ago. She closed it before the emptiness could shame her further. On the kitchen counter, she emptied her purse. A bus card, a broken lipstick, a folded photograph of her mother, a receipt from the pharmacy, and $7. Exactly 7. Maria touched the bills with tired fingers. She had counted them 3 times already on the bus home, but some desperate part of her hoped the number would change. It didn't. $7. She leaned against the counter and closed her eyes. At Hale Industries, the night supervisor had announced the cut like it meant nothing. Budget adjustments, he'd said, not even looking at the workers standing in front of him. 2 nights a week gone from Maria's schedule, just like that. For the executives upstairs, it was probably a line on a spreadsheet. For Maria, it was food, it was rent, it was Leo's inhaler if his cough came back. It was the difference between surviving and falling. The next evening, Maria dressed Leo in his cleanest school shirt and walked him to Mrs. Bell's apartment downstairs. Mrs. Bell was 71, kind, and nearly deaf, unless gossip was involved. She watched Leo during Maria's night shifts for very little money and sometimes accepted soup instead. "You look pale," Mrs. Bell said, opening the door. "I'm just tired." "You ate today." Maria smiled. "I'm fine." Mrs. Bell stared at her for a long moment, then reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a banana. For the boy. Maria's throat tightened. Thank you. On the bus to Hale Industries, Maria held the $7 in her coat pocket. After work, she would stop at the corner store. Bread, milk, maybe noodles if they were on sale, something warm for Leo. The Hale Industries building rose over downtown like a tower made of cold glass. Every night, Maria entered through the service door at the back, where the dumpsters were lined up like guards. She signed her name on the clipboard beneath the security camera and changed into her gray janitor's uniform. To most people in the building, Maria was invisible. They saw the mop, not the woman holding it. They saw the trash bag, not the tired hands lifting it. They stepped around the wet floor signs without noticing who had placed them there. That night she cleaned the lobby twice because someone spilled coffee near the elevators. She emptied trash cans filled with half-eaten food she wished she could take home without humiliation. She wiped fingerprints from glass doors that led to rooms she would never be invited into. Near midnight, she paused outside the executive conference room. Through the open door, she saw a long polished table, leather chairs, and a wall of framed photographs. One picture showed a much younger man standing beside the Hale Industries logo, his smile confident, his eyes sharp. Victor Hale. Maria knew the name, of course. Everyone did. The billionaire founder, the man whose decisions moved thousands of lives, the man who owned the company that had just cut her hours. She looked at the photograph for only a moment before lowering her eyes and pushing her cart down the hall. By the time her shift ended, rain had begun tapping against the windows. Maria changed quickly, pulled her thin coat tight, and hurried toward the bus stop. The streets were slick and shining beneath the traffic lights. A few people waited under the shelter, their faces lit blue by their phones. Maria stood apart from them, one hand in her pocket, touching the $7 like a promise. Then she heard it. A sharp gasp. At first she thought someone had dropped something, but then an old man near the curb grabbed at the bus stop sign, staggered, and sank to the wet pavement. For a second, no one moved. A man in a business coat glanced up, frowned, then stepped back as if trouble might stain his shoes. A young couple whispered. Someone said, "Is he drunk?" Maria rushed forward. "Sir," she said, kneeling beside him, "can you hear me?" The old man's face was pale. His breathing was uneven, and his hand trembled against the pavement. "Please," Maria called to the others, "someone call an ambulance." People looked away. Her heart pounded. She dug into her purse for her phone, but the screen was black. Dead battery, of course. She turned to the man in the business coat. "Please, may I use your phone?" He hesitated. "I'm late." "For an ambulance," she said, her voice breaking. With a sigh, he handed it over. Maria made the call, gave the location, and stayed beside the old man while rain soaked through her uniform pants. His eyes opened briefly. "Don't leave," he whispered. "I won't," Maria said. A convenience store glowed across the street. The old man's lips looked dry, and his hand was cold beneath hers. Maria looked toward the store, then at the road, where the ambulance had not yet appeared. She ran inside and bought a bottle of water. It cost $2. When she came back, she helped him take a small sip, careful and slow. The sirens finally rose in the distance. By the time the paramedics arrived, Maria's $7 had become $5. Then, after riding 2 buses instead of 1 because she missed the last direct route, it became nothing. She got home before dawn, soaked, hungry and empty-handed. Leo was still asleep when Maria stepped inside. Mrs. Bell had left a note on the table. He ate the banana. Rent man came again. "Sorry, dear." Maria sank into the chair. She had saved a stranger, but she had failed to bring home breakfast. And by sunrise, she would have to return to the company that did not know her name. By 7:30 the next morning, Maria stood in the tiny kitchen with 1 egg in a pan and Leo sitting at the table, swinging his legs. She had beaten the egg with a splash of milk to make it look like more than it was. The rice from the fridge warmed beside it, soft and plain. Leo watched the pan with sleepy hope, his toy fire truck parked beside his plate. "Is that breakfast dinner?" he asked. Maria smiled. "It's chef special." He grinned. "Because you're the chef." "Exactly." She divided the food carefully, giving Leo most of it. He noticed anyway, he always did. "Mommy, yours is small." "I ate at work," she lied gently. Leo studied her face, then pushed one spoonful of rice toward her. "Then just taste mine." Maria's chest tightened. She leaned forward and took the smallest bite, making a show of enjoying it. "Perfect," she said. The apartment buzzer sounded before she could clean the pan. Maria stiffened. Leo looked toward the door. "Is it Mrs. Bell?" The buzzer came again, longer this time. Maria wiped her hands and went to the hallway. Through the peephole, she saw Mr. Ellis, the building manager, holding a folder beneath his arm. His mouth was pressed into the thin line he wore whenever rent was involved. She opened the door, only halfway. "Good morning, Mr. Ellis." "It would be better if I had your rent," he said. Maria lowered her voice. "I told you I'd have the rest by Friday." "You told me that last Friday." "My hours were cut. I'm working on it." He looked past her into the apartment. Maria shifted, blocking his view of Leo. "You're a good tenant," Mr. Ellis said, not sounding like he believed goodness mattered much. "But the owner doesn't take stories, he takes payment. You have 3 days. 3. After that, I file the notice." Maria gripped the door so hard her knuckles lightened. "Please, my son." "I'm sorry," he said, already stepping back. 3 days. When she closed the door, Leo was standing behind her with his fire truck clutched to his chest. "Are we in trouble?" he asked. Maria knelt in front of him. "No, baby, grown-up stuff." "Grown-up stuff makes your eyes sad." She pulled him into her arms. "Then I'll tell my eyes to behave." He laughed a little, and that small sound gave her enough strength to keep moving. At school drop-off, Maria kissed Leo's forehead and watched him disappear through the doors with the other children. Some wore bright backpacks and clean sneakers that flashed when they ran. Leo's shoes had cardboard tucked inside the soles to cover the holes. Maria turned away before anyone could see her cry. She spent the day looking for extra work. At the diner, the manager said they were fully staffed. At the laundromat, the owner told her to come back next month. At a grocery store, a teenager barely older than 16 handed her an application and warned her there were already 20 people ahead of her. By late afternoon, Maria's feet throbbed. She had not eaten since Leo's spoonful of rice. Still, she reported to Hale Industries before her shift, because being early was one of the few things she could control. The service entrance smelled of damp cardboard and trash. Inside, 2 other cleaners stood by the time clock, whispering. "Did you hear?" one of them, Carla, said as Maria approached. "Hear what?" "Some old rich man got taken to the hospital last night near here." Maria's hand paused above her time card. "At the bus stop." Carla's eyes widened. "You saw it?" Maria nodded. "I helped until the ambulance came." The other cleaner, Denise, leaned closer. "Girl, that was Victor Hale." Maria stared at her. "No." "Yes," Carla said. "The Victor Hale. They said he came here for some late meeting and left without his driver. Nobody knows why." Maria felt the hallway tilt. Victor Hale. The man from the framed photograph. The billionaire founder. The owner of the company. The stranger whose hand had trembled in hers while rain soaked her knees. "That can't be," she whispered. Denise shrugged. "That's what security said. Whole building's nervous." Maria's thoughts flew backward. His pale face, his whispered plea, "Don't leave." She remembered buying the water. The last of her money gone into a plastic bottle for a man who owned more buildings than she could imagine. For one sharp second, bitterness tried to rise in her. Then she pushed it down. A person in pain was still a person. Rich or poor, powerful or forgotten, fear made everyone's voice sound the same. Her supervisor, Mr. Klein, stepped into the corridor with a clipboard. He was a narrow man with polished shoes and a talent for making every worker feel replaceable. "Alvarez," he said, "you're on lobby, executive elevators, and 10th floor restrooms." "That's usually 2 people," Maria said before she could stop herself. His eyes lifted slowly. "Is there a problem?" "No." "Good, and be careful what you repeat about Mr. Hale. This company values discretion." Maria took the mop handle and lowered her gaze. "Yes, sir." For hours she worked through hunger and exhaustion. The lobby seemed brighter than usual, filled with security guards, worried assistants, and executives speaking in low voices. Everyone cared deeply now that the man in danger had a name worth billions. Near 9, Maria knelt by the elevators, scraping dried gum from the marble. 2 men in suits walked past her. "If Victor doesn't recover fast, the board will push Langford into position," one said. "Langford's been waiting years. Especially after the staffing cuts. He'll say he saved the company millions." Maria's hand froze. Staffing cuts. The decision that had emptied her fridge was, to them, a victory. She kept scraping until the gum came loose. At midnight, she took the trash from the executive floor. As she passed the conference room, she saw Victor Hale's photograph again. Under the bright lights, he looked untouchable. But Maria knew better. She had seen him on wet pavement, afraid and alone. "Alvarez." Mr. Klein's voice snapped behind her. Maria turned quickly. "What are you doing standing there?" "Nothing, just taking the trash." "Then move." She pushed the cart toward the service elevator, cheeks burning. When her shift ended, rain still fell outside. Maria stepped out through the back door and walked toward the bus stop with no money for a ride, no food to carry home, and 3 days before eviction began. The same stretch of sidewalk waited beneath the streetlight. For a moment, she looked at the place where Victor Hale had collapsed. Then she whispered a prayer for him, not because he was rich, but because he had asked her not to leave. And she hadn't. The next morning began with a knock, not a buzzer. Maria opened her eyes before sunrise, startled from the shallow sleep of someone who had gone to bed hungry and worried. Leo was curled beside her, one hand tucked beneath his cheek, breathing softly. For a moment, Maria stayed still and hoped she had dreamed it. Then the knock came again. 3 firm taps. She slipped from the bed, pulled her sweater around herself, and crossed the apartment quietly. Her first thought was Mr. Ellis. Her second was that 3 days had somehow become 3 hours. But when she looked through the peephole, she did not see the building manager. A man in a dark suit stood in the hallway. He was tall, clean-shaven, and perfectly still, with a leather folder under one arm. Behind him, near the stairs, stood another man who looked like a driver. Maria's stomach tightened. She opened the door, with the chains still latched. "Yes." "Maria Alvarez," the suited man asked. His voice was polite, but official enough to make her nervous. "Yes. My name is Daniel Pierce. I represent Mr. Victor Hale." Maria's hand tightened on the door. Leo stirred behind her. "Mommy." "1 minute, baby," she called softly. Daniel Pierce lowered his voice. "I apologize for coming so early. Mr. Hale asked that I find you as soon as possible." "Find me," Maria repeated. "Yes, may I speak with you?" Maria looked down at her worn sweater, then back at the stranger in the expensive suit. Every instinct told her to be careful. People with money did not come to apartments like hers unless they wanted something signed, taken, or silenced. "What is this about?" she asked. "Last night," he said, "at the bus stop, you helped Mr. Hale." Maria swallowed. "Is he all right?" A small change passed over Daniel's face, not quite a smile, but close. "He is recovering. The doctors say your quick action helped prevent things from becoming much worse." Maria leaned against the doorframe. Relief came so suddenly it made her knees weak. "Thank God," she whispered. Daniel held out an envelope. "Mr. Hale asked me to give you this." Maria did not reach for it. "What is it?" "A personal message and a check." The word check struck her harder than she expected. She thought of the rent notice, Leo's shoes, the empty fridge, the $7 that had disappeared in one night of choices. Still, she shook her head. "I didn't help him for money." "I know," Daniel said, "so does he." Maria hesitated, then unlatched the chain and opened the door wider. Leo appeared behind her, rubbing his eyes, his curls wild from sleep. "Who's that?" he whispered. Daniel's expression softened. "Good morning." Leo hid behind Maria's leg. Maria took the envelope but did not open it. It felt heavy in her hand, as if paper could carry the weight of a life changing. "Mr. Hale would like to meet you," Daniel said. Maria looked up quickly. "Meet me?" "Yes, today, if possible." "I have work tonight." "At Hale Industries, correct?" Her face warmed. "You know that too." "We confirmed it this morning." Something about that made Maria feel exposed. Her life had been invisible yesterday. Today, rich men knew her name, her address, and her job. Daniel seemed to understand her discomfort. "Mr. Hale insisted we handle this respectfully," he said. "You are not in trouble, Ms. Alvarez." "Then why does it feel like I am?" Daniel paused. "Because people like us usually arrive after trouble has already happened." Maria looked at him, surprised by the honesty. Leo tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy, I'm hungry." The words landed between them. Daniel looked away first, giving her the dignity of pretending not to notice too much. Maria's cheeks burned. "Excuse me." She carried the envelope to the table and opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a folded note written in dark ink. "Maria, you stayed when others walked away. I remember your voice. I remember your hand holding mine. I remember the water. Please accept this with my gratitude, though it is not enough. Victor Hale." Behind the note was a check. Maria stared at the amount. $10,000. The room blurred. She sat down hard in the chair. "Mommy," Leo asked, frightened now. Maria tried to speak, but no sound came. $10,000 was more than money. It was rent, food, medicine, shoes, breathing room. It was a locked door staying theirs. It was tomorrow finally arriving. Daniel stepped closer, but kept a respectful distance. Mr. Hale wanted it to be more. His doctors convinced him not to handle business from the hospital bed, but he was very clear that this was only the beginning. Maria shook her head slowly. "I can't accept this." "Why not?" "Because it's too much." Daniel glanced around the small apartment, not with judgment, but with quiet understanding. "With respect, Ms. Alvarez, I don't think it is." Maria looked at Leo, who was watching her with worried brown eyes. Pride rose in her, sharp and familiar. It had carried her through years of closed doors, but pride had never filled a lunchbox. Pride had never paid rent. She folded the check carefully and placed it back in the envelope. "I'll meet him," she said, "but I need to take my son to school first." "Of course. And I don't want cameras, no reporters, no story about the poor janitor who saved the billionaire." Daniel's face became serious. Mr. Hale said the same thing. Maria looked at him sharply. "He did. He said you deserved gratitude, not spectacle." For the first time that morning, Maria believed him. 2 hours later, after dropping Leo at school with a promise that everything was going to be okay, Maria rode in the back of the black car. She sat straight, hands clasped in her lap, afraid to touch anything. The city moved past the tinted windows in a blur of grey buildings and morning traffic. Daniel sat in front, speaking quietly on his phone. Maria stared at the envelope in her hands. At the hospital, they entered through a private side entrance. The halls smelled of flowers, antiseptic, and money. There were no crowded waiting rooms here, no crying families pressed shoulder to shoulder. Victor Hale's room was at the end of a quiet corridor. Daniel knocked once, opened the door, and stepped aside. Maria entered slowly. The man in the hospital bed looked older than the photograph at Hale Industries. His silver hair was combed back, his face pale, his body connected to quiet machines, but his eyes were open. Sharp, tired, alive. When he saw Maria, he smiled. "There you are," he said, his voice rough but warm. "The woman who refused to let me die alone on a sidewalk." Maria stood frozen near the door. "I only did what anyone should have done." Victor's smile faded slightly. "Yes, that is what makes it rare." Maria looked down, uncomfortable beneath his gaze. "Thank you for the check," she said. "It will help more than I can explain." "I suspect I know more than you think," Victor said. Something in his tone made her look up. He reached toward the bedside table and picked up an old photograph. His hand trembled, but his eyes did not leave her face. "I asked Daniel to find you because of what you did," he said. "But when he brought me your name, I realized something else." Maria's heart began to beat faster. Victor turned the photograph toward her. It showed a younger Victor standing beside a woman Maria recognized instantly. Her mother. Maria took one step back. "No," she whispered. Victor's voice softened. "Your mother saved my life once too." Maria stared at the photograph until the hospital room seemed to shrink around her. Her mother's face looked back from another life. Isabel Alvarez was young in the picture, her dark hair pinned neatly, her smile shy but bright. Maria remembered that smile from childhood mornings, from nights when Isabel bent over a sewing machine for extra money, from the final hospital bed where her voice had grown thin but her hand had stayed warm. Maria touched the edge of the photo. "My mother knew you." Victor nodded. "She did, a long time ago. She never told me. I asked her not to." Maria looked up sharply. "Why?" Victor closed his eyes as if the answer hurt. "Because I was ashamed." Daniel Pierce stood near the door, silent and watchful. Victor lifted a hand. "Leave us, Daniel." When the door closed, Victor turned back to Maria. 30 years ago, Hale Industries was not a tower of glass. It was 3 rented offices, unpaid bills, and a young fool pretending confidence could replace wisdom. I trusted the wrong partner. He stole from the company, forged papers, and nearly ruined everything. Maria sat slowly in the chair beside him. One stormy night, after I discovered what he had done, I drove away angry. My car slid off the road near the old East Bridge. I was trapped. Your mother was walking home from a diner shift. She saw the wreck, climbed down the embankment, and stayed with me until help came. Maria's throat tightened. That sounds like her. She ruined her coat that night, missed her last bus, lost her job the next morning because she arrived late. She lost her job helping you, Maria whispered. Victor nodded, shame plain on his face. I offered money, she refused, so I offered work. At Hale Industries. Yes, filing at first. Later, bookkeeping. She was careful, brilliant with numbers, and honest in a way that made dishonest men afraid. Maria thought of her mother's old metal box, the one filled with tax papers, birthday cards, and documents Maria had never understood. She worked for you before I was born. For almost 7 years, Victor said, and when she found the hidden accounts my partner used, she helped me prove the theft. Without Isabel, Hale Industries would have collapsed. The machines beside his bed hummed softly. I promised her she would always have a place at the company, Victor continued. More than that, I placed a small number of shares in her name. At the time, they were worth very little. Today, they are worth a great deal. Maria stared at him. Shares? Yes. No, she shook her head. We had nothing. My mother died with hospital bills on the table. We lost our house. If she had shares, she would have used them. She may never have known what they became, Victor said. After she left, I was told she wanted no further contact. By who? Victor's jaw tightened. Elliot Langford. Maria recognized the name from the men by the elevator, the man waiting to take Victor's place. He told me Isabel accepted a settlement, Victor said. He showed me papers with her signature. Years later, I learned signatures can be copied. Maria's fingers curled around the photograph. My mother would never steal from her own child. I believe that now. You should have believed it then. Victor lowered his eyes. Yes. Anger rose in Maria, hot and shaking. So the company my mother helped save is the same company that cut my hours, the same company where I scrub floors while executives throw away food. Victor flinched. Yes. And the man who may have cheated her is still there. For now. Maria stood, her chair scraping the floor. Why are you telling me this? Victor's eyes sharpened. For the first time, Maria saw the man whose name was carved across a city skyline. Because yesterday you saved my life before knowing who I was. Years ago, your mother did the same. I believe I have been given one more chance to make this right. A check does not make this right. No, Victor said, it does not. He reached for a folder on the bedside table and pulled out a document. I have ordered a full investigation into Langford and every executive tied to those staffing cuts. Your job will be protected. Your hours will be restored. Every cleaner affected will be reviewed for back pay. Maria blinked, stunned. And my mother, she asked. My legal team is reopening the trust connected to her shares. If the documents prove what I believe, what belonged to Isabel belongs to you. Maria looked again at the photograph. Her mother's smile seemed different now, not sad, but waiting. Victor's voice softened. Tomorrow, I want you at Hale Industries, not through the service entrance, through the front doors. I want the board to meet Isabel Alvarez's daughter. Maria swallowed. What if they refuse? Victor's gaze did not move from hers. Then I remind them whose name is on the building. The next morning, Maria stood across the street from Hale Industries with her son's school drop-off kiss still warm on her cheek and her heart beating like it wanted to escape. For years, she had entered that building through the back. The service door was familiar to her, dented metal, sticky handle, the sour smell of dumpsters nearby. It was the door for cleaners, delivery people, repairmen, and anyone else the company needed but did not want to see. Today, a black car waited at the curb. Daniel Pierce stepped out first. He looked calm as always, but Maria noticed the tension in his jaw. Good morning, Ms. Alvarez, he said. Maria looked up at the glass tower. I almost went around back. You won't ever need to do that again, unless you choose to. She gave a nervous laugh. I don't feel like I belong at the front. Daniel opened the car door. Mr. Hale disagrees. Inside the car, Victor Hale sat with a blanket over his knees and a doctor's warning written all over his pale face. He should have been in bed, but his eyes were bright with stubborn purpose. Maria, he said, ready. No. Good, neither am I. That made her smile despite herself. The car moved only half a block before stopping beneath the main entrance. Security guards straightened when they saw Victor. The lobby, usually a place Maria cleaned after everyone left, was now filled with morning light, polished shoes, and quiet shock. People turned. Whispers moved faster than footsteps. Victor stepped out slowly, leaning on a cane. Daniel offered his arm, but Victor waved him off. Then he turned and held out his hand to Maria. She hesitated. Every instinct told her not to draw attention. Keep your head down, do the work, don't make trouble, don't give powerful people a reason to remember your face. But then she thought of her mother standing in rain beside a wrecked car. She thought of herself kneeling on wet pavement beside Victor. She thought of Leo asking if they were in trouble. Maria lifted her chin and took Victor's hand. Together, they walked through the front doors. The security guard at the desk blinked. "Mr. Hale, sir, we weren't informed." "That was intentional," Victor said. His voice was not loud, but the lobby seemed to quiet around it. They crossed the marble floor Maria had scrubbed until her knees hurt. For the first time, she saw it not from below, not through a cleaner's tired eyes, but as someone being escorted across it with purpose. Near the elevators, Mr. Klein stood frozen with his clipboard. His eyes went from Victor to Maria, then back to Victor, as if the sight did not fit inside his understanding of the world. "Mr. Hale," he stammered, "we are honored to have you back." "Are you?" Victor asked. Klein swallowed. "Of course, sir." Victor looked at Maria. "Do you know Ms. Alvarez?" Klein's face paled. "Yes, she's one of the night janitors." "One of," Victor repeated. "Interesting how quickly people become numbers when pay is involved." Klein said nothing. The elevator doors opened. Victor, Maria, and Daniel stepped inside, leaving Klein staring after them. On the 20th floor, the boardroom waited. Maria had cleaned it many times, always after midnight, always alone. She knew the long table, the leather chairs, the silver water pitchers, the silent portraits of men who had built fortunes while people like her emptied their trash. Today, those chairs were full. Men and women in expensive suits looked up as Victor entered. At the far end of the table sat Elliot Langford, silver-haired, smooth-faced, and smiling with the confidence of a man who believed he had already won. "Victor," Langford said, rising, "you should be resting." "I tried," Victor replied, "then I remembered you were here." The smile on Langford's face tightened. Victor moved to the head of the table. Daniel placed a folder in front of him. Maria stayed near the door until Victor turned. "Ms. Alvarez, please sit beside me." Every eye in the room shifted to her. Maria walked forward. Her shoes were clean but old. Her dress was simple. She felt every thread, every flaw, every stare. Still, she sat. Langford leaned back. "May I ask why a member of the cleaning staff is attending a board meeting?" Victor opened the folder. "Because this company owes her family more than wages." A woman near the center frowned. "Victor, what is this?" "This," Victor said, lifting the old photograph of Isabel Alvarez, "is the woman who saved Hale Industries before most of you knew its name." Maria watched Langford's face. For one instant, his expression changed. Not much, just a flicker. But she saw it. Victor continued. He told them about the crash, about Isabel's work, about the hidden accounts she uncovered, about the shares placed in her name and the settlement papers that may have been forged. Langford gave a quiet laugh. "This is absurd. You're recovering from a medical episode. Perhaps Daniel should have postponed business matters until you were well enough to think clearly." Victor's eyes hardened. "Be careful, Elliot." Langford turned to the board. "We cannot allow sentiment to interfere with governance. A janitor appears out of nowhere, tells a touching story, and now we are discussing corporate ownership." Maria's face burned, but she stood before fear could silence her. "I didn't appear out of nowhere," she said. The room went still. Maria's voice trembled at first, then steadied. "I came through the back door every night. I cleaned this room. I emptied your trash. I picked up the food you threw away while wondering if my son would have breakfast. You did not see me because you did not need to." Langford's mouth tightened. "Ms. Alvarez." "My mother's name was Isabel," Maria said, cutting him off. "She worked hard. She was honest. If someone stole from her, they didn't just steal money. They stole safety. They stole years. They stole choices from a child who grew up watching her mother worry." No one spoke. Victor nodded once to Daniel. Daniel passed copies of documents around the table. Preliminary forensic review shows irregularities in the alleged settlement signature. We have also found archived correspondence indicating Ms. Isabel Alvarez asked about missing share statements more than once. Langford stood. This is a theatrical ambush. No, Victor said. This is accountability. 2 security officers entered quietly. Langford looked at them, then at Victor. For the first time, his confidence cracked. You would humiliate me over a cleaner. Victor rose slowly, leaning on his cane. I would burn my own name off this building before letting it stand on what you did to Isabel Alvarez. Maria felt tears in her eyes, but she did not lower her head. Victor turned to the board. Effective immediately, Elliot Langford is suspended pending investigation. The staffing cuts are frozen. A wage review begins today. Every contractor and hourly worker affected will be audited for back pay, and Ms. Alvarez will remain under my personal protection until her family's claim is resolved. Langford's voice dropped coldly. You'll regret this. Maria looked at him then. For years, men like him had frightened her because they could take things away. But he had already taken so much. No, she said quietly, you will. As security escorted Langford from the room, Maria sat back down, shaking. Victor leaned toward her. Your mother would have been proud. Maria looked at the photograph resting on the table. For the first time in years, she believed that maybe her mother had not left her with nothing. Maybe she had left her a truth strong enough to open the front doors. 3 weeks later, Maria returned to Hale Industries, carrying a small blue lunchbox in one hand and Leo's backpack in the other. This time, she did not pause across the street. She did not look toward the alley where the service entrance waited beside the dumpsters. She did not wonder which door was meant for people like her. She walked straight through the front. Leo skipped beside her, his repaired fire truck tucked beneath one arm. He wore new sneakers that flashed white when the sunlight touched them. And every few steps, he looked up at the towering building with wide eyes. Mommy, he whispered, is this where you clean? Maria smiled. It's where I used to clean. Do you own it now? A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. No, baby, not exactly. But Mr. Victor said Grandma helped save it. He did. Then maybe we own a little piece. Maria looked down at him. Maybe we do. The truth was still being untangled by lawyers, investigators, and people who used words Maria was learning slowly. The forged settlement, the hidden shares, the trust in Isabel Alvarez's name, the missing notices, the way Elliot Langford had built his rise on buried lies. But some things had already changed. The eviction notice was gone. The rent was paid months ahead. The fridge was full. Leo had new shoes, a proper winter coat, and the blue lunchbox he had chosen himself because it had rockets on it. Maria had tried not to cry when he placed it in the shopping cart. And at Hale Industries, the night cleaning crew had received their restored hours, back pay reviews, and something Maria had never seen there before, respect. Mr. Klein no longer barked orders with his clipboard pressed to his chest. In fact, Mr. Klein no longer worked there. Denise said he had chosen to pursue other opportunities, which made Carla laugh so hard she nearly dropped a mop bucket. Maria and Leo stepped into the elevator with Daniel Pierce. Leo stared at Daniel's polished shoes. Are you a spy? Daniel blinked, then adjusted his tie. Not usually. Do spies say that? Maria covered her smile. Daniel leaned down slightly. A good spy probably wouldn't. Leo nodded, satisfied. That's what I thought. When the elevator opened on the 20th floor, Maria felt the old pull of memory. She had cleaned these halls when they were empty, when her name meant nothing here. Now people greeted her softly as she passed. Good morning, Ms. Alvarez. Nice to see you, Maria. Mr. Hale is expecting you. Each greeting felt strange, but not unwelcome. Victor's office overlooked the city. It was warmer than Maria expected, filled with books, old photographs, and a wooden desk marked with scratches that proved even billionaires kept things that had survived them. Victor stood by the window, thinner than before, but stronger than he had looked in the hospital. A cane rested near his hand. When Leo saw him, he ran forward. "Mr. Victor." Victor turned, and his face softened. "Captain Leo." Leo held up his fire truck. "It has both wheels now." "So I see, a restored vehicle, very important. Mommy says you have something to tell us." Maria shot Leo a look. "Leo." Victor chuckled. "He's right." Daniel opened a folder on the desk. Maria's heart began to beat faster, just as it had the morning the black car came to her apartment. Victor gestured for her to sit. "The investigation is not finished," he said, "but enough has been confirmed for us to act. Your mother's shares were never lawfully transferred. The trust connected to them belongs to her heir." Maria placed one hand over Leo's shoulder. Victor looked directly at her. "That heir is you." The room went very quiet. Maria did not ask how much. For some reason, the number frightened her. Money had always been something counted in coins, overdue bills, and choices made at grocery shelves. The idea of a fortune did not feel real. It felt like standing at the edge of an ocean after living beside a dry well. Victor seemed to understand. "You do not need to decide anything today," he said. "You will have independent lawyers, financial advisors who answer to you, not to me. Daniel will help arrange them, but only with your approval." Maria looked at the old photographs on Victor's shelf. In one of them, her mother stood beside a row of filing cabinets, smiling with a pencil tucked behind her ear. "She should be here," Maria whispered. Victor's eyes grew damp. "Yes, she should." Leo climbed into Maria's lap, too big for it, but welcome there. "Does this mean Mommy doesn't have to be scared anymore?" Maria closed her eyes. For years, fear had lived with her like another tenant. Fear of rent, fear of sickness, fear of phone calls from school, fear of bills in envelopes, fear of being one bad week away from losing everything. She opened her eyes and kissed the top of Leo's head. "It means we can breathe," she said. Victor reached for another document. "There is one more thing." Maria gave a tearful laugh. "Of course there is." Victor smiled faintly. "The board has approved the Isabel Alvarez Worker Relief Fund. It will support hourly employees facing emergency hardship, rent, medical needs, childcare, transportation. No employee in this company should have to choose between helping a stranger and feeding their child." Maria's tears spilled over. "You named it after her." "I should have honored her years ago," Victor said. "I will not waste the time I have left pretending regret is enough." He slid a pen across the desk. "I would like you to serve as the first director of the fund." Maria stared at him. "Me? You know what people need because you have lived it. You know what gets ignored because you were ignored. That makes you more qualified than anyone in this building." Maria looked down at the pen. She thought of her mother climbing down a stormy embankment to save a young man who would one day become powerful. She thought of herself kneeling in rain beside that same man decades later. She thought of $7, a bottle of water, and the terrible beauty of doing the right thing when it cost everything. Then she took the pen. Her signature looked small on the page, but it did not feel small. Victor stood carefully. "Welcome to Hale Industries, Ms. Alvarez." Maria shook his hand. "No," Leo said suddenly. Everyone looked at him. He grinned. "Say welcome through the front door." Victor's laugh filled the office, warm and surprised. Maria pulled Leo close and looked out over the city. Somewhere below, buses hissed at curbs. People hurried through rain and sunlight, carrying private burdens no one else could see. She knew she could not save everyone. But now, because of her mother's courage and one choice made with her last $7, she could open a door for some of them. And this time, it would be the front one.